Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be layering colours with stencils and I'm using Dina Wakley heavy bodied paints to do this. So I'm starting off my Dina Wakley journal just using some gesso to spread out thinly over my 2 pages. I'm working on the cotton rad paper and the craft paper, and they're 2 pages that I've just been sort of cleaning off brushes and stencils on. I decided when I was doing this I just wanted to do a double spread, so that's why I'm sort of putting the gesso on to make everything look cohesive, but also it's going to work really well with the technique that I'm going to be using on it. So to do that, I'm making sure that I just, have my page as dry as possible. Because the gesso is really thin, it doesn't take all that long to dry. Now I would suggest, if you are patient, possibly not drying the craft paper, because I've found it tends to curl a bit. It will flatten out eventually, but I'm not patient, as you would all well know by this stage, so I use my heat gun quite regularly. So I'm starting out just by splodging some paints on. I had no real idea of what I was doing or what colour I wanted to use, apart from I wanted to be bright. And this, I'm using the stencil from the Crafters Workshop. So the colours I started out with were fuchsia and magenta, just watered down a little bit so they spread really easily. And you can see by using the wet wipe over the top, it brings that white out. Now it's really important when you're doing this technique to dry in between your layers. The reason for that is you don't want the wet paint to move again or blend again. So I want to make sure that pink stays pink, and I want to be able to put what I was watching on TV, comedy shows as you go along. I wanted to put some yellows and brighter colours over the top and not have them blend together. So every layer I do, I will dry off in between. However, because I'm really clever, I didn't actually wipe off my stencil in between. I'm using the same stencil for each part of this. So you can see here how it's layering up. By having the gesso in the background, you can see how it's really on that yellow. The white's coming up really well. You can see on the other colours where that's going to, you can see the pink coming up more than the white. So this is where the layering starts to happen. And again, drying off between each layer as I go. Now, while I'm putting the paint on straight onto the page, I'm using a really watery brush so I can spread it out, and it helps to rub off the extra paint as well. And I'm just using the same wet wipe each time. There's no need to use a different one for each one. It doesn't really matter because you're using the same colours on the page. But on this particular layer, you can sort of see with the blue on the right hand side where you can see the pink and the yellow peeping through. And particularly with this green layer that's going to go on, you'll see some of the colours from behind peeping through again. So that's what I really like about this technique, is you see all the previous layers that you've put down, and it starts to blend it all together. The key to doing this, I think, is also using the same stencil, the same patterns, so it looks cohesive. Even though it looks kind of all over the place, there's still something keeping it all together. I'm just going back and cleaning up my pages. And you can see that craft page starting to curl. I don't know if it's just me, the way I apply paint on my page, but I find that happening. I know a lot of people, when they're working in their journals, they use bulldog clips to keep everything flat. I just find they get in the way, or I get paint all over them, which is why I avoid them. So I've decided to put a face on this page, and this is one of the Dina Wakley collage faces, and I have to admit, after getting the new release of these faces, I've been using them in everything. I really love them. I'm still not confident with drawing faces myself, and I love the style of her Dina Wakley's lines and how easy they are to apply. So I'm just putting some gel medium back, and I've put rather a lot in the background. I was really generous with it, and you can see now with my spatula I'm going back over and applying a little bit more of the gel medium over the top, but scraping it off and pushing it out from underneath, which gets rid of the bubbles. And you can see how translucent that image has got, apart from the little wrinkle I've got down the bottom. by having it so wet, scraping it off and putting the excess on top and scraping it off. All my scraped off gel medium goes straight back into my jar, so I'm not wasting anything. And then just going back in and drying it and then applying some paint pens. So I go in with the white Posca paint pen around the eyes just to make them really pop off the page. And I find I do that in a lot of my images, even sort of my collage images and of magazine pictures and so on. By going in and painting over the top of them, it just really brings a focus to the image and to the eyes. So I'm going in with more paint pens over the lips, and I thought that was all the colour I would add to the image because I wanted it to have the colours coming in from the background. But I decided that I wanted to just add a little bit more paint to this image, to the hair, just to frame, I think, the face a little bit more and to let the colours from the background come up. So I'm using the burnt umber, and again making it really, really diluted. The great thing about the Dina Wakley paints is you can add lots and lots of water to it and it still stays really, really pigmented. So that's almost like a sort of watercolor layer over the top, but it's sitting really nicely on top of the gel medium and dries down beautifully. Because it's a matte paint, it will blend really easily, and I can write over it again at the end, which you will see. So just going in with my white pen and just adding a few extra highlights. Apart from the colour on the cheek, I was thinking about maybe painting over the face, but I really like the colours coming through from the background. So I was sitting here thinking about what I wanted to do next. I loved the page, I loved the background, but I just wasn't 100% sure what to add to it. So, as has been my go-to recently, I thought I'd do a big quote on the other side. And I'm using the Tim Holtz foam stamps, and I think this is the woodcut stamps in upper and lower case. And if anyone has got a better option or a better way of organising the stamps, please let me know, because you will see when I'm doing this, I spend half the time actually looking for the letters. And I'm very disorganised because I can't be bothered putting them back in order, which I know would make things a lot easier, but so be it. So I need to find a way to do it much more easily. I'm using a archival ink to stamp these, and it stamps really, really clearly over the acrylic paint. I do find, usually I don't stamp with a block, but when I'm doing alphabets, I do find it does help to be able to put them out on something so you can actually read what you're writing and making sure they're right. I always struggle, particularly with this set, to find the D's, and I always have to check beforehand where they are and if I've actually got them in the right direction. These stamps are also really, really great if you put paint over the top of them. So brayer out some paint and put it over the top. That holds up to it really, really well. But just for this, because I had the bright colours in the background, I wanted something fairly neutral and something that would focus for my alphabet or for my quote. And as you can see, I'm not too concerned that it's going over the image. I quite like how it sort of blends over and creates this flow that it's all one piece. So I think the entire quote says she couldn't keep her colours inside the lines, so she drew new ones. And it was based on a quote that is on one of Dina Wakley's new collage sheets. She's got a whole large A4 sheet of quotes on it. And it was sort of sitting there, and it was too small for this page, but I thought I really like that, and it really fits in with what I was thinking and feeling at the time. So I decided to borrow the quote and put it down on this page. So just finishing off the quote now, and once I did this, I decided I liked it, but it needed a little bit more. It also needs punctuation. I think it's the teacher coming out of me. I really miss the fact that this set doesn't have any punctuation in it, apart from the little dot that comes with the eye that you can use as a full stop. So I had to draw that in myself. I think one of the other sets that he does with it's a more Roman-based alphabet type. It has some punctuation, it's got question marks and so on in it, but this one doesn't. So I decided I was going to put some shadowing on these letters, and I did the first letter and you couldn't see where the white shadow was. So what I've actually done is just moved the shadow like a millimetre inside the black. So you can kind of see there's a little black line on the other side of the shadow, and it looked really, really effective and really popped the letters off the page. But it really bothered me with that first S that I couldn't see it. So you'll see at the end I go back and refix that. So all in all, this is a fairly simple page to put together. It's just using the collage face and putting the quote together. But it's really bright and cheerful, and it's got a real focus in my journal. As I turn through, this is actually the halfway mark, and I know I put up my halfway flip for this journal on my YouTube channel yesterday. So if you haven't seen that and seen all the pages in my journal, feel free to go and view that video. But this sort of seemed really fitting to have halfway through my journal, because I can never stay within the lines. I always go outside of them, and I like trying lots of different things. To fix up that S, what I did was just went back with my foodball pen, drew over the black, and then re-put in my shadow. And now all I'm doing is just journaling over my page about how I feel about that quote, why I chose it, why is it important to me. Again, in really loose writing, but I can read it, and I just like the text that goes on that page as well. So this is the final piece. If you haven't got your hands on some of those collage faces and it's something you're interested in, I'd really suggest grabbing them, because they are just a brilliant addition to your art journaling stash. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye.